Hey guys, welcome to a new video. I'm Stephanie West. I'm an LPC here in the state of Michigan. I want to give a little bit of maybe insight and calm reassurance that you're normal. Probably, most likely, I'm normal, and that was actually a revelation to me once upon a time too. But the reason we have to have that conversation is because so many people will come into therapy and assume that they're just on the fringes of society. They are just colossal mess ups. There's pieces of their story that are unredemptive. They've wasted too much time. They're steeped in behaviors too deeply to get out of. And every time we have to bring it back and say like, ooh, sounds like you're kind of normal. Sounds like you've been through some hard stuff. Sounds like you've responded to those hard things with maybe some behaviors you're not really proud of or not really sure about anymore. Maybe you're maturing out of it, and that's certainly normal too. Let's talk. One of my favorite anecdotes that a mentor shared with me was he had a woman come and talk to him years ago at this point. But she said to him, I'd like to come start grieving the loss of my husband. And he said, okay, let's have that conversation. Let's start that kind of a grief therapy process. And she said, the thing is, he died 8 years ago. Is that normal that I'm only now starting to be able to grieve it? And he said to her, well, that certainly sounds like you're normal. We've got to understand that normal is not a thing, or at the very least, normal is an expansive category, and most all of us fall within that. And so one of the pieces of mental health that we've got to, change some of the verbiage around is what you're doing has some type of, it has some type of relevance to your story. So if you're doing things that you don't like, one thing we often say to people is, what's the function of the dysfunction that you're doing? It has a purpose. It's serving a goal. Whatever you're doing, if you're in addiction, you're numbing from something, you're soothing from something. If you're in addiction, we talk about, you're a workaholic, you're using some sort of substance, you're using food to soothe, you're maybe engaging in pornography. Those are not helpful responses to hard things, but those are pretty typical responses to hard things. And if those are behaviors that are showing up and you don't want them to be a part of your story, let's replace them. Let's do something with that. And it's one of those things where you have to step out of the kind of embarrassment of, well, I do these things and I don't want to share about it. How do you expect things to get any better if we don't put language to it and put strategies in place to do something differently? But I assure you, whatever you're wrestling with, it's probably pretty explainable if we go into your story. And so I can't think of a single time over the last 100, 150, 200 clients where I've sat there and said like, oh, what they do makes no sense. That's outside of what I could even imagine or even fathom. Human behavior is actually pretty predictable. Not predictable in the sense of where you're at as a foregone conclusion, but predictable in the sense of when hard stuff happens, we have typical ways that we tend to respond, and some of it becomes concerning to our mental health, and so we work on it. So we want to really dive into the understanding that whatever you're doing, whatever that, frustration is, whatever that quirk is, that idiosyncrasy, what you perceive to be an abnormality, it's actually probably more normal than you would suspect. But if it's causing distress, let's get in and let's do something about it. We can help with that. But one of the first things I do with clients is I reassure them, well, that certainly sounds like the way someone would cope with your particular situation. I sat with a therapist for a year, and so often he said to me, that certainly sounds like what someone who is a survivor of childhood sexual trauma would do. That certainly sounds like something that a child who was affected by childhood sexual trauma, that sounds like what they would do. That certainly sounds like what an adult would do who's a survivor of child sexual abuse. And he said that ad nauseum, because as much as I wanted to cling to the idea that I'm just getting it wrong, or I'm too damaged, or I'm not doing life right, what I was doing was quite normal. Not helpful, not healthful, but normal. So we want to create some space to say what you're doing is probably pretty normal. If you want to stop doing it, come see us, because we can help with that. Hopefully that's helpful. If you have someone who's mired in some sort of, self-rejection or despondency or certainty that they're not normal somehow, go ahead and send them this video. If you're, riddled with that sort of mantra running, keep watching this video until it sinks in that you're actually quite normal. And if there's patterns and behaviors going on that you don't like, let's do something about that. That certainly would be normal too.